Good morning. My name is Chris Wood. I'm the President and CEO of Trout Unlimited. And on behalf of all of our volunteers and staff, I want to thank you for being here for the third annual Native Southwestern Trout Working Group meeting. You know, every year this meeting has gotten larger and more successful, and it's a real testament to the power of volunteers working with state and federal agencies in our common cause of helping to recover these most deeply imperiled, amazingly cool southwestern trout. At TU, we work with a very basic conservation model, and one that I think is borne out well by your work. Basically, what we try to do, if my arm represents a river system, and these are the higher elevation tributaries, the sources of the coldest, cleanest water, what we're working to do is to protect these areas. This is where all of these relic native trout populations are found, as you all so well know. But the big fires that we've seen in the Southwest over the past few years, which are predicted to increase over time through climate change, in addition to having big droughts and big floods, they demonstrate that it's not enough to simply draw circles on a map and protect these as museum pieces, because these small isolated populations can be wiped out by those big natural events. So what we work to do is to help to reconnect these protected areas by removing unneeded barriers to migration in the middle of rivers, and by making sure we have sufficient in-stream flows so that fish can pass, ultimately down to restored valley bottoms, where the most biologically productive portion of the landscape historically was. This work to protect, reconnect, and restore entire river systems is the definition of climate change adaptation. It is precisely the kind of work that we need to be doing to develop so-called meta-populations of these native fish so that they're better able to withstand the big natural events that are predicted to increase through climate change. And thankfully, we've got some great demonstrations of how this partnership is already bearing that work out on the ground. In the Rio Castillo watershed, for example, we've seen great work by all of us here today to help recover a meta-population for Rio Grande cutthroat trout. Similarly, in southern Arizona, the Arizona Department of Game and Fish has really been leading the way, along with TU volunteers and others, in helping to recover Gila trout in the southern part of the state. And then finally, in the aftermath of all the devastation from those fires, the human tragedy and the natural resource damage that occurred, there's come out of that a wonderful partnership where state and federal agencies are working with nonprofits like TU and others to help build a recovery plan so that we can make sure that Apache trout are better able to withstand these big fires and floods and drought in the future. One of my favorite conservationists is Aldo Leopold, and Leopold, as everyone knows, hailed from the Midwestern part of the country, from Wisconsin, and it was there that he wrote a Sand County Almanac. But he actually cut his conservation teeth here in the Southwest, and it was here that he came up with this notion that we should be protecting big blocks of land and calling them wilderness and not allowing for development, and just protecting them for their intrinsic natural resource values. Well, Leopold had a quote, which is one of my favorites, and he said, "One of the penalties of an ecological education is that one lives alone in a world of wounds. An ecologist must either harden his heart and believe that the consequences of science are none of his business, or he must be the doctor who sees the marks of death in a community that believes itself well and doesn't want to be told otherwise." It's very easy as conservationists to see the loss of open space, to see the devastating effect of development and poor land management practices on these really special, cool trout populations. It's really easy to see the loss of water quality and to become discouraged or otherwise defeatist. But your presence here today, the very fact that you're working together to help recover these, the most imperiled of our southwestern fishes, is a demonstration that you will not give in to that cynicism or to that pessimism. And that's the way it should be. Conservation is the most uniquely American, optimistic, affirmative, forward-looking philosophy that we've offered to the rest of the world. And your presence today is a celebration of that fact. And this is how it should be, right? Particularly for those of us who are fly anglers, there's not one among us who are not eternal optimists, because only an eternal optimist would joyfully, willingly stand in freezing water, in often freezing outdoor air temperatures, and cast a combination of fur and feathers and wire at river ghosts. And there's not one among us who on that last cast of the day isn't 100% confident that this will be the cast that I will catch the biggest fish of the day. You bring that sense of optimism and that can-do attitude to your work to help recover, to build these meta-populations for native trout, and to help make sure that we're recovering the natural resiliency of our river systems so they're better able to withstand the effects of climate change. And for that good work and for the partnership that we are all in with you, you have my and all of the staff and volunteers at Trout Unlimited's deepest appreciation and thanks.